Hello, second graders. Welcome to Read Aloud with me, Miss Taylor. So we are reading chapter 13 of the City of Ember. And chapter 13 is called Deciphering the Message. And before we begin, so at the end of chapter 12, Lena and Dune, after they discovered that the mayor was stealing, they went to talk to one of the guards, Barton Snowed, and they told him that the mayor was stealing. And Barton Snowed, he wrote down a message. He's like, I'll make a note of it. The mayor stealing. Secret room. And then Dune and Lena left. And that's all we know so far. Let's find out what happens. Deciphering the message. And if you decipher something, it means you kind of figure it out. Like there's a code, then you figure out the code. Like last week, a couple weeks ago at the announcements, it was a few weeks ago, Anushka made up a code and we had to decipher the code. Remember that? Okay. Dune headed for home and Lena went in the opposite direction across Harkin Square. The little group of believers had gone, but the protesters with their signs continued to pace back and forth. A few of them were still shaking their fists in the air and yelling, but most of them tramped silently, looking tired and discouraged. Lena felt a bit that way too. Once Dune said he'd seen a door, she was sure that the door he'd found and the door in the instructions were the same. She had had such high hopes for that door in the pipeworks, but hoping so hard had made her jump to conclusions. She'd gone a little too fast. She always went fast. Sometimes it was a good thing and sometimes not. Now Dune thought the instructions were nothing important after all. She didn't want him to be right. She didn't believe he was, even now. But her thoughts felt like a mess of tangled yarn. She needed someone wise and sensible to help her sort things out. She headed for Gloam Street. Wonder who she's going to ask. Are you making a prediction? Oh. Did you predict Clary? Though it was nearly 6 o'clock, she found Clary still in her workroom at the far end of Greenhouse 1. It was a small, crowded room. Pots and trowels cluttered a high table at one end. Above the table were shelves full of bottles of seeds and boxes of string, wire, and various kinds of powders. Clary's desk was a rickety table littered with scraps of paper, all of them covered with notes in her neat, round handwriting. 2 rickety chairs went with the rickety table, one on each side. Lena sat down facing Clary. I have to tell you some important things, she said, and they're all secret. All right, said Clary. I can keep secrets. She was wearing a patched shirt that had faded from blue to gray. Her short brown hair was tucked behind her ears, and a bit of leaf clung to it on the right side. She folded her arms in front of her on the desk. She looked square and solid. First thing is, Lena began, that I found the instructions, but Poppy had chewed them up. The instructions? Said Clary. I'm not familiar with them. Lena explained. She went on to explain everything, how she'd shown the instructions to Dune, what they had figured out, how he'd searched the pipeworks and found the door, and what he'd seen when he opened the door. Clary made an unhappy sound and shook her head. Oh, our lights went off. Let's see. Right. There we go. Clary made an unhappy sound and shook her head. This is very bad, she said. And sad, too. I remember when the mayor was first starting out. He's always been foolish, but not always wicked. I'm sorry to know that the worst side of him has won out. Clary's dark brown eyes seemed to grow deeper and sadder. There's so much darkness in Ember, Lena. It's not just outside. It's inside us, too. Everyone has some darkness inside. It's like a hungry creature. It wants and wants and wants with a terrible power. And the more you give it, the bigger and hungrier it gets. Lena knew. She had felt it in Looper's shop as she hovered over the colored pencils. For a moment she felt sorry for the mayor. His hunger had grown so big it could never be satisfied. His huge body couldn't contain it. It made him forget everything else. Has that ever happened to you where you want something so badly and then you end up not really behaving how you should because you really want it? Like we get a little bit greedy or a lot greedy sometimes. Clary let out a long breath, and a few scraps of paper on her desk fluttered. She ran her fingers through her hair, felt the bit of leaf, and plucked it out. Then she said, "About these instructions." "Oh, yes," said Lena. "They might be important, or they might not be. I don't know any more." "I'd like to see them if you'd let me." "Of course you can see them, but you'll have to come home with me." "I'll come now if it's all right," said Clary. "There's plenty of time before lights out." Lena led Clary up the stairs and into her new bedroom at Mrs. Murdo's. "Nice room," Clary said, looking around with interest. "And I see you have a sprout." "A what?" said Lena. "Your bean," said Clary, pointing at the little pot of dirt on the windowsill. Lena bent to see what Clary was talking about. Sure enough, the dirt was heaving up a little. She touched the pushed-up part, brushed away the dirt, and discovered a pale green loop. A little loop. It looked like a neck, as if a creature in the bean were trying to escape, but hadn't yet managed to pull its head out. Of course, she already knew that plants grew from seeds, but to have put that flat white bean in the dirt, to have almost forgotten about it, and now to see it forcing its way up into the air. "It's doing it," she said. "It's coming to life." Clary nodded, smiling. "Still amazes me every time I see it," she said. Lena brought out the instructions, and Clary sat down at the table to study them. She puzzled over the patchwork of scraps for a long time, tracing the lines with her finger, murmuring the parts of words. "What you've figured out so far seems right to me," she said. "I think ip orc must be pipeworks, and iverb ink must be riverbank. So this bit must be down riverbank, then there's a space, to edge. Edge of what, I wonder? And does it mean down riverbank, as in walk alongside the river?" "Yes, I think so," Lena said. "Or does it mean go down the riverbank itself, down the bank toward the water? Maybe edge means edge of water?" "It couldn't mean that. The bank goes straight down like a wall. You couldn't go down to the edge of the water, you'd fall in." Lena pictured the dark, swift water and shivered. "This word," said Clary, putting a finger on the paper. "Maybe it isn't edge, maybe it's something else. It could be hedge or pledge." You know any other words that rhyme with edge? Those don't make much sense, but it could be ledge or wedge. Ooh, we know about wedges, simple machines. Lena saw that Clary was no better at deciphering the puzzle than she was. She sighed and sat down at the end of her bed. "It's hopeless," she said. Clary straightened up quickly. "Don't say that. This torn-up piece of paper is the most hopeful thing I've ever seen. Do you know what this is? Do you know what this word is?" She pointed to the word at the top of the paper. "Egress." So she's pointing to this word, egress. Someone's name, isn't it? The title would be Instructions for Egreston, or maybe Egressman, something like that. The person the instructions were for. "I don't think so," said Clary. "If you add an S to this word right where the tear in the paper is, you get egress. Do you know what that means?" So now we're looking at this word, egress. And Clary is very excited about this word. Do you know what this word means? Oh my goodness. I think I might have to have you wait until next time. Oh, Miss Taylor, you're so cruel. What does that word mean? What is egress? You'll have to wait just 2 days to find out. Now, if you can't wait to find out, you could ask your parents to help you look it up. The word egress. What does it mean? See you again soon.